If you don't know who you are, you're basically just going to become a mold of what everybody else wants you to be. And because everybody wants different things from you, you're going to be so confused and you're not going to be able to please everyone. You're just going to feel so lost within your life. And that affects every single aspect of your life. When it comes to career, when it comes to love life, when it comes to everything, your identity is the core. And I feel like this is such an important thing that you need to master and conquer for you to live your ultimate best life and become the very best version of yourself and succeed and be confident and all that shit. Hello my darlings, I hope you are all doing okay. Today we are talking about identity. More so people who feel like they don't have an identity and how you can actually get to know yourself so that you can be the most confident and best version of yourself. There's nothing worse than feeling like you just don't really know who you are. It's a little bit wishy-washy. You feel like you're very easily swayed from side to side. You might find yourself in a position where other people feel the need to tell you who you are and you kind of believe them because you don't really know who you are yourself. And I don't think it's a good starting point to have to not know who you are. And unfortunately, a lot of us just simply don't know who we are. I am here to fix that today because I was too in that situation. I had no idea who I was. I was such a people pleaser. I believed basically everything that anyone said to me about myself. I was stubborn in other ways, but that's another story. But anything that people used to say to me about me, for example, you don't have common sense, I'd believe it because I'd think, oh, well, they obviously know me better than myself because they interact with me, when really that's not the case. You are the only person who knows who you are deep down and nobody else can tell you who you are. Also, if you're new to this channel, my name's Sammy. Hi, it's amazing to meet you. I'm so glad that you're here. On this channel, we're just trying to figure out life in our 20s and beyond. We talk a lot about self-development on this channel and becoming the best version of ourselves, being a sensitive, highly sensitive person in a very overstimulating world, and just navigating life in general. So if that's anything you're interested in, please stick around. Let's be besties. If you feel like you're lacking confidence and that's something that you feel really holds you back in your life, I can probably guarantee that it's because you are lacking self-assurance. And you're lacking self-assurance because you might be lacking identity, like knowing who you even are. So we need to fix that. In order for you to go out in life with your best foot forward and achieve all the things that you want to achieve, you have to know who you are. Because if you don't know who you are, other people are going to tell you. And I can tell you right now, all that leads to is a life full of resentment and anger and bitterness and rage. So how can you get to know yourself, you might ask? You'll want to start off by observing your interactions with other people. Sometimes it's really just as simple as living your day-to-day life and just observing, not being too much of an active role in your life for a while and just sitting back and listening and observing what people are like, not getting wrapped up into confrontations or anything like that, just observing people and seeing the traits that you like in people and the traits that you dislike in people. I found that the traits that I hated or disliked the most in myself were actually traits that could be found in my family. And that was basically because I was brought up by my family, obviously, and I always thought that my traits and who I thought that I thought that was fixed. I thought that I could never change, and if I did change, I would face a lot of backlash and people wouldn't like it, blah, blah, blah. And while that might be the case, you might face a lot of backlash and people might not like it, you can change at any given time. Like, you do not have to conform to the beliefs that you were taught when you were younger. That was a starting point for me because once I realized that there was a life outside my family and people were actually so different to the people in my family, obviously, love my family, love them so much, no hate to them, but I just think very differently and I have different belief systems, let's say, to my family. So once I started meeting people who aligned with that, it really broadened my horizons because I thought like, if people can actually be like this is showing me things that I actually want to be like myself and traits that I want to implement in myself to become a person that I actually like. Because for the longest time, I didn't like myself because the traits that I was seeing in myself were the things that I didn't like in my family dynamic. So knowing that you can actually change at any given moment is so essential. Knowing that however you were brought up, whoever you were brought up by and whatever environment you were brought up in, that does not determine who you actually are. And you'll know this because the traits that you don't like them for a reason. That's because they don't resonate with you. That's because you don't want to be like that. So if you're being reflected in your reality, the traits that you don't like about yourself, then that's a key indicator that you are not surrounded by the right people and this is not what your identity is meant to be. So really keep a note of the things that you do like and that you don't like in people. Even if you have to write it down in your notes app, just to kind of get an understanding of what you value and what you don't. All of your family and peers aside, whatever they think, this is purely what you think and what feels good to you and what feels good within your body. Making a note of that will be really, really helpful in building the foundations of knowing who you actually are. This really helped me, but personality tests and astrology. I, as I say, was very lost. I had no idea who I was outside of what other people told me that I was. I really didn't have, I want to say a backbone. I did have a backbone, but I just didn't have an understanding or a grasp of who I actually was because people in my life were very vocal, very loud, and would overpower my thoughts, basically. So when I came across astrology, and I'm not talking just like your star sign, because I feel like we all know our star sign from when we have consciousness. But when I actually started getting into astrology, which was like the end of 2020, I want to say, I learned so much about myself and I found so much validation in discovering what my birth chart was, knowing my sun, moon and rising sign and all of the other planets. Basically, if you didn't already know, you don't just have a star sign or a sun sign. We might reject astrology a lot of the time, and obviously you can reject it now, it's not for everyone, but I definitely rejected astrology a lot. I was very skeptical about it, but it's so crazy because once I actually learnt my birth chart, it really enlightened me and it was like I had been seen for the first time, and it was like somebody was understanding me and getting me on a different level that other people don't understand me on. It was very validating for me. So I learned that I am a Gemini sun, which I already knew, Aquarius moon and a Cancer rising, which when I put together all of those traits of those different signs, which you can obviously Google and find out the meanings behind any of the signs. But once I put all of those traits together, that recipe really did make so much more sense than just knowing that I'm a Gemini, because I did used to reject it. I used to get a lot of negative connotations from Gemini and people would just say that Geminis are two-faced, they're ditzy, they're not able to make a decision, which, to be fair, I think the reason I was rejecting it is because I didn't want to believe it to be true, because actually I am a true Gemini. But anyway, but what I'm saying is that when I looked at my birth chart and found out all of the different parts of that, it was like somebody had written a report about me and it just felt so validating. The things that I kind of knew about myself inherently, I felt like I was more able, or I felt more comfortable to express those things because I'd had that validation from my birth chart. Oh, and by the way, I'll leave a link down below to the website that I use. You just put in your date of birth, your name, where you were born, and time of birth if you got it, and it calculates your birth chart. And it'll basically give you a whole report on your birth chart and it'll explain it for you, and it's great. But if astrology is not your bag, then I would highly recommend doing personality tests. I have done so many personality tests. I am a sucker for a personality test. I fucking love them. I remember back in the day on Facebook when everyone was on Facebook and there would be like, what type of bread are you? And I'd be like, oh my God, tell me. I would just want to know. So I've always been that way inclined. But if you've not, I really do encourage you to do a couple of personality tests. Figure out a bit more about yourself, even if it's not you don't feel like it's necessarily accurate. I feel like maybe the personality test would probably be more accurate for more people than astrology, because you're actually answering questions. So it's probably going to give you a more accurate result, but I am a stan for astrology. But anyway, once you do these personality tests, it's going to give you a lot more comfort in the traits that maybe you thought were shameful and you thought that you shouldn't have. It's going to give you more comfort because you're going to realize that these traits are actually normal. I kind of touched on this in the first point, but I feel like it's really important when you're trying to build your identity and figure out who you are, for you to spend more time with people who you feel aligned with and who you feel inspired by, motivated by, and you just feel good in their energy and in their company. If you currently don't like who you are right now, or you feel lost in who you are at the moment, it's not going to help you at all staying in the same social circles, because you're just going to be surrounded by all of these confusing different opinions and people who just don't really align with you. I'm not saying cut everybody out, because sometimes you can't do that. People say online oh, just cut them out, but you can't really do that as much as you probably would want to in real life. I don't know, I feel like cutting people out is a bit mean, and I think people do it too willy-nilly nowadays. I would only really cut someone out if they've very deeply betrayed me. But like, some things don't need to be that deep. Sometimes you can just part ways. You don't need to properly cut people out. Anyway, it's really important for you to be surrounding yourself by people who actually spark some sort of inspiration in you and you think, oh my god, I really want to be like them. Even if you can't do this in real life, watching YouTube videos of people who you really admire and look up to and you would love to be like them or have more of their traits, watching those videos and just saturating your mind with this kind of energy is really going to help you consolidate who you actually are and really strengthen that and make you feel more confident stepping into that version of yourself. If you know deep down that you want to be a public speaker, let's say for example, but you're surrounded by really shy, really anxious people, if you're not surrounding yourself by other people who actually inspire you and motivate you and do the kind of things that you want to do, you're not going to feel like that's possible for you and you're not going to really know necessarily how to do it. I think it's really helpful to utilize connections and relationships with other people to learn from them and to learn from their mistakes and just to observe and kind of low-key mirror how they act in certain situations. Now, I'm not saying copy people because you need to be yourself at the end of the day. Like, this is finding your identity, not just copying somebody else's. And I think that's really important. I love that quote where it's like, you can either be a really shit version of somebody else or the very best version of yourself. I think that is truly amazing because no matter how much you try to copy somebody else and be like them and encapsulate their energy and their vibe, you're never going to do it because vibes, energy, all of that kind of stuff is not replicable. Is that a word? It can't be copied. You need to be the best version of yourself and focus on you and the things that make you an amazing and good energy person. I've kind of lost my train of thought, but basically just spending time with people and trying to really make friends with people who are inspiring to you and not just staying stagnant in friend groups with people who you feel like you don't really align to, who maybe you have a couple of narcissists in your life who are trying to like control you a little bit and tell you who you are, and they don't really do that with your best interest in mind. I think it's just good to observe. Like I said in the first point, like you need to observe first of all and then kind of add more people into your life who are inspiring. Anyway, my lovelies, I am going to put the fan on now because I'm sweating, but I love you guys so much and I hope you all have an amazing week and weekend. Bye!